if you please, you're to come upstairs,' replied the tailor's daughter with a smile. Nicholas followed the young lady, and was shown into a small apartment on the first floor, communicating with a back room, in which, as he judged from a certain half subdued clinking sound as of cups and saucers, Miss Snevellicci was then taking her breakfast in bed. 'You're to wait, if you please,' said the tailor's daughter, after a short period of absence, during which the clinking in the back room had ceased, and been succeeded by whispering, 'She won't be long.' As she spoke, she pulled up the window blind, and having by this means, as she thought, diverted Mr. Johnson's attention from the room to the street, caught up some articles which were airing on the fender, and had very much the appearance of stockings, and darted off. As there were not many objects of interest outside the window, Nicholas looked about the room with more curiosity than he might otherwise have bestowed upon it. On the sofa lay an old guitar, several thumbed pieces of music, and a scattered litter of curl papers, together with a confused heap of playbills, and a pair of soiled white satin shoes with large blue rosettes. Hanging over the back of a chair was a half-finished muslin apron with little pockets ornamented with red ribbons, such as waiting women wear on the stage, and, by consequence, are never seen with anywhere else. In one corner stood the diminutive pair of top boots in which Miss Snevellicci was accustomed to enact the little jockey, and folded on a chair hard by was a small parcel, which bore a very suspicious resemblance to the companion Smalls. But the most interesting object of all was perhaps the open scrap book, displayed in the midst of some theatrical duodecimos that were strewn upon the table, and pasted into which scrap book were various critical notices of Miss Snevellicci's acting, extracted from different provincial journals, together with one poetic address in her honour, commencing, "Sing, God of love, and tell me in what dearth thrice gifted Snevellicci came on earth, to thrill us with her smile, her tear, her eye. Sing, God of love, and tell me quickly why." Besides this effusion, there were innumerable complimentary allusions, also extracted from newspapers, such as, "We observe from an advertisement in another part of our paper of to-day, that the charming and highly talented Miss Snevellicci takes her benefit on Wednesday, for which occasion she has put forth a bill of fare that might kindle exhilaration in the breast of a misanthrope. In the confidence that our fellow townsmen have not lost that high appreciation of public utility and private worth for which they have long been so pre-eminently distinguished, we predict that this charming actress will be greeted with a bumper. To correspondents. J.S. is misinformed when he supposes that the highly gifted and beautiful Miss Snevellicci, nightly captivating all hearts at our pretty and commodious little theatre, is not the same lady to whom the young gentleman of immense fortune, residing within 100 miles of the good city of York, lately made honourable proposals. We have reason to know that Miss Snevellicci is the lady who was implicated in that mysterious and romantic affair, and whose conduct on that occasion did no less honour to her head and heart than do her histrionic triumphs to her brilliant genius. A copious assortment of such paragraphs as these, with long bills of benefits, all ending with "Come early" in large capitals, formed the principal contents of Miss Snevellicci's scrapbook. Nicholas had read a great many of these scraps, and was absorbed in a circumstantial and melancholy account of the train of events which had led to Miss Snevellicci's spraining her ankle by slipping on a piece of orange peel flung by a monster in human form, so the paper said, upon the stage at Winchester, when that young lady herself, attired in the coal scuttle bonnet and walking dress complete, tripped into the room with 1,000 apologies for having detained him so long after the appointed time. "But really," said Miss Snevellicci, "my darling Led, who lives with me here, was taken so very ill in the night, that I thought she would have expired in my arms." "Such a fate is almost to be envied," returned Nicholas, "but I am very sorry to hear it, nevertheless. What a creature you are to flatter! said Miss Snevellicci, buttoning her glove in much confusion. "If it be flattery to admire your charms and accomplishments," rejoined Nicholas, laying his hand upon the scrapbook, "you have better specimens of it here." "Oh, you cruel creature, to read such things as those! I'm almost ashamed to look you in the face afterwards, positively I am," said Miss Snevellicci, seizing the book and putting it away in a closet. "How careless of Led! How could she be so naughty?" "I thought you had kindly left it here on purpose for me to read," said Nicholas; and really it did seem possible. "I wouldn't have had you see it for the world," rejoined Miss Snevellicci. "I never was so vexed, never. But she is such a careless thing, there's no trusting her." The conversation was here interrupted by the entrance of the phenomenon, who had discreetly remained in the bedroom up to this moment, and now presented herself with much grace and lightness, bearing in her hand a very little green parasol with a broad fringe border and no handle. After a few words, of course, they sallied into the street. The phenomenon was rather a troublesome companion, for first the right sandal came down, and then the left, and these mischances being repaired, one leg of the little white trousers was discovered to be longer than the other. Besides these accidents, the green parasol was dropped down an iron grating, and only fished up again with great difficulty and by dint of much exertion. However, it was impossible to scold her, as she was the manager's daughter, so Nicholas took it all in perfect good humour, and walked on with Miss Snevellicci arm in arm on one side, and the offending infant on the other. The first house to which they bent their steps was situated in a terrace of respectable appearance. Miss Snevellicci's modest double knock was answered by a footboy, who, in reply to her inquiry whether Mrs. Curdle was at home, opened his eyes very wide, grinned very much, and said he didn't know, but he'd inquire. With this he showed them into a parlour, where he kept them waiting until the two women servants had repaired thither under false pretences to see the play actors, and having compared notes with them in the passage, and joined in a vast quantity of whispering and giggling, he at length went upstairs with Miss Snevellicci's name. Now, Mrs. Curdle was supposed, by those who were best informed on such points, to possess quite the London taste in matters relating to literature and the drama; and as to Mr. Curdle, he had written a pamphlet of 64 pages, post octavo, on the character of the nurse's deceased husband in Romeo and Juliet, with an inquiry whether he really had been a merry man in his lifetime, or whether it was merely his widow's affectionate partiality that induced her so to report him. He had likewise proved that by altering the received mode of punctuation, any one of Shakespeare's plays could be made quite different, and the sense completely changed. It is needless to say, therefore, that he was a great critic, and a very profound and most original thinker. "Well, Miss Snevellicci," said Mrs. Curdle, entering the parlour, "and how do you do?" Miss Snevellicci made a graceful obeisance, and hoped Mrs. Curdle was well, as also Mr. Curdle, who at the same time appeared. Mrs. Curdle was dressed in a morning wrapper, with a little cap stuck upon the top of her head. Mr. Curdle wore a loose robe on his back, and his right forefinger on his forehead, after the portraits of Sterne, to whom somebody or other had once said he bore a striking resemblance. "I venture to call for the purpose of asking whether you would put your name to my bespeak, ma'am," said Miss Snevellicci, producing documents. "Oh, I really don't know what to say," replied Mrs. Curdle. "It's not as if the theatre was in its high and palmy days. You needn't stand, Miss Snevellicci. The drama is gone, perfectly gone. As an exquisite embodiment of the poet's visions, and a realisation of human intellectuality, gilding with refulgent light our dreamy moments, and laying open a new and magic world before the mental eye, the drama is gone, perfectly gone," said Mr. Curdle. "What man is there now living who can present before us all those changing and prismatic colours with which the character of Hamlet is invested?" exclaimed Mrs. Curdle. "What man indeed, upon the stage?" said Mr. Curdle, with a small reservation in favour of himself.